When you save on auto insurance for driving safe with USAA Safe Pilot, you'll feel like a big deal, even in a traffic jam. Save up to 30% with USAA Safe Pilot. Restrictions apply.
On today's Smart 7, thousands of Gazans forced to evacuate. Australia votes on its constitution and lots more. It's Monday, the 16th of October. It's World Bread Day, and happy birthday, John Mayer.
The Smart 7. It's news, but not the news.
The Israeli military has been inching closer to the Gaza border this weekend after warning all Gaza City residents to evacuate southwards on Friday. The order has resulted in tens of thousands of Gazans fleeing their homes as the Israeli army continued to deploy tanks and weapons to their border, with a ground operation looking imminent. It follows a week of relentless airstrikes on the Strip, which have left more than 2,000 Palestinians dead. And as Israel vows to obliterate the Palestinian militant group Hamas, UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says their forces need to consider the civilian population.
Restraint, discipline, these are the hallmarks of the Israeli Defence Force that I want to see, in stark contrast to the terrorist atrocities perpetrated by Hamas. And I've said, maintain that clear distinction.
Almost 2 million people remain trapped in Gaza, with food and fuel supplies running low. After an intervention from US President Biden, the water supply was restored to southern Gaza on Sunday. And on Monday morning, US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said that the border crossing from Gaza to Egypt at Rafah is set to reopen. Israeli government advisor Mark Regev denies Israel's breaking international law and says the response is necessary.
This is not another round of fighting. This is war. We didn't want this war, and though we didn't want this conflict, we will win it, and at the end of this, it will end on our terms.
As the world reels from Israel's response to the Hamas attack, this weekend has seen protests all over the globe on behalf of the Palestinian people. Across the UK, people in London, Manchester, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Liverpool and Aberdeen have taken to the streets calling for a free Palestine. Thousands flocked to the capital on Sunday, including former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn.
It is right to condemn the targeting of civilians, which is, of course, a war crime within international law. But it's also right to condemn the continuing occupation of Palestine by the Israeli military forces.
15 people were arrested at the London protest after the Met Police promised to crack down on anyone showing support for Hamas. But most protesters say they oppose violence on either side. Here's one protester explaining why she joined the march.
I'm here because I'm a human being, and anyone with a conscience believes that a civilian population should never be punished in this way. It's collective punishment. It's a war crime. And unless we stop it, unless we get out there and say something, it's going to end up with thousands losing their lives.
With all eyes on the Israeli-Hamas conflict, there's concern that the war in Ukraine could begin to spill over into other territories after a crater from a suspected Russian drone was discovered in NATO member Romania on Friday. Meanwhile, Russia's attack on the eastern Ukrainian town of Advika appears to have been largely unsuccessful, as according to a top Ukrainian commander. Russian forces began their attack with a dawn raid on the town last Tuesday morning, but it's thought they've only managed to make modest gains so far. It's the largest offensive attack launched by Russia in months, and Russian President Putin says increased attacks are necessary.
The counter-offensive has completely failed. We know that the opposing side is preparing new active offensive steps in certain combat areas. What is happening now along the entire length of the line of combat is called active defense.
Saturday saw Australian voters reject a proposal to recognise Indigenous people in the Constitution following a historic referendum which saw 59% of the overall population vote no to the change. Voters were asked whether they wanted to create a federal advisory body which would represent the voice of Indigenous groups to Parliament, but the Australian Capital Territory was the only region to vote yes by majority. Australian Indigenous leader and former national rugby player Lloyd Walker says this isn't the end of the road for the voice.
When I got the right to vote, 1964, I was 5 years old at that time. We weren't classified as Australian citizens to 67. So it's been a long, hard struggle. Our Indigenous leaders are fighters, so we'll keep fighting.
So to come in, Smart 7, England are through to the Rugby World Cup semis, and Rick Astley's been reflecting on Glasgow.
Right after this.
Trying to grab all the groceries in one trip? Oof, not how you would have done that. You know sometimes less is more. Like when you drive less and save with the USAA annual mileage discount. USAA. Get a quote today.
Welcome back.
There was plenty of action in the Rugby World Cup this weekend as the tournament semi-finalists were determined. Saturday saw Wales knocked out by Argentina, whilst Ireland fell narrowly to the All Blacks in the second quarter-final. And on Sunday, England secured their spot in the semi-finals with a 30-24 victory over Fiji, while host France went out on a 29-28 scoreline to South Africa. England now face the Springboks next weekend and will need to beat them to reach their second consecutive World Cup final. England captain Owen Farrell was named player of the match and says he's delighted with the result.
We always knew Fiji were going to have some good patches and they certainly did, so to find a way to win for us and to get through to the semi-finals, a big step forward for us. We know we've got plenty of work to do.
It's been a year of firsts for 80s pop icon and meme king Rick Astley. He released his first studio album in 5 years this weekend, just 4 months after making his first ever Glastonbury appearance to a packed out Pyramid stage and more than 2 million TV viewers. And he appeared on The One Show last week to promote his new music, where he reflected on his Glasgow experience.
I loved every second of it. I was pretty terrified building up to it, to be honest, because obviously it's quite a daunting thing to do, Glastonbury Pyramid stage. But our daughter was with us. She gave me a bit of advice before I went on, just said, look, own it, be in the moment, actually be present, be there. And I managed to do that, I think. I kind of really enjoyed every second of it.
It's been more than 50 years since Gene Wilder wore the iconic Willy Wonka top hat in the 1971 film adaptation of Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And now Timothée Chalamet will be attempting to fill his shoes as he stars opposite Hugh Grant in the new musical fantasy film Wonka, which explores Willy Wonka's origin story as a young chocolatier. It'll be released in cinemas right in time for Christmas, and a new trailer just dropped.
So you're the funny little man who's been following me.
Funny little man? How dare you? I will have you know that I am a perfectly respectable size for an Oompa Loompa.
An Oompa what now?
In fact, in Loompa-land, I am regarded as something of a whopper.
Sorry.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes and we'll give you the world.
This message is brought to you by Maker's Mark. Makers believes in celebrating the people who have inspired us to pursue our passions. And now, thanks to the Maker's Mark personalized label program, you can create a custom label to celebrate those special loved ones with their own unique Maker's Mark label. And best of all, the label program is free. Go to makersmarkpersonalized.com to order your personalized label today. Must be 21 or older. Labels currently available for 750 milliliter bottles only. Bottles must be purchased separately. Maker's Mark makes their bourbon carefully, so please enjoy it that way. Maker's Mark Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, 45% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2023 Maker's Mark Distillery Incorporated, Loretto, Kentucky.